The UK is under pressure to extend the transition period with Brussels after polling revealed two-thirds of Britons would support a delay to Brexit because of the c.o.r.o.n.a.virus outbreak. Polling analysis shows that a clear majority of Britons favour remaining in the European Union's single market and customs union beyond the end of the year to enable the Prime Minister extra time to secure a trade deal. Downing Street has repeatedly pledged to leave the transition period, which is scheduled to end on December 31. But the research shows just 19% of Britons currently back the government's position to leave, with or without a deal, at the end of the year given the impact of the global pandemic on the trade talks with Brussels. Support for an extension has been growing in recent weeks. WPI Strategies research found 67% of participants would support the government, whereas on March 20, YouGov found that 55% of people would support extending the transition period with negotiations ground to a halt because of the coronavirus outbreak. Nick Faith, director of WPI Strategy, said, "While 1 in 5 people do support the government's current stance to leave the EU with or without a future trade deal in place before the end of the year, it's clear that the majority of Brits do not share that view. It might increasingly seem a bit odd that the only thing not impacted is the future trading talks with the EU." The survey of 2016 people was carried between April 1 to 2, 2020, for WPI Strategy by JL Partners. Despite the pressure of dealing with the coronavirus crisis, the government has reopened negotiations with Brussels. The Prime Minister's lead negotiator, David Frost, today sought to reassure people over his progress. Writing on Twitter, Mr. Forst said, "I want to reassure everyone that we have remained in touch throughout, both sides have exchanged legal texts, and last week we had a series of conference calls to explore and clarify technicalities. The UK's chief negotiator will share new draft trade proposals with his EU counterpart Michel Barnier next week. He has already tabled a draft agreement with chapters on trade, aviation and nuclear cooperation." A UK government spokesman said, David Frost and the EU's deputy head of the task force, Clara Martinez-Alberola, and their team spoke by video conference to take stock of those discussions and to consider the next steps. They agreed that there was scope for further productive discussions and contact should continue in the next few days. Planned negotiating rounds have been scrapped after it was deemed too risky to hold face-to-face talks. Instead, both sides will continue to plow on with talks over the phone while a more concrete negotiating plan is devised by the chief negotiators. Mr. Frost and Mr. Barnier, who have self-isolated after displaying coronavirus symptoms, have agreed to hold a high-level discussion in a bid of reaching a breakthrough. They both hope to reach a timetable in order to move the negotiations forward in April and May. A European Commission spokesman said, Michel Barnier will speak with David Frost next week to agree a calendar for the next steps in order to move the negotiations forward, taking into account the coronavirus outbreak. Officials from both sides have so far failed to agree on a format for remote negotiations, with video conferencing still a favored option.